Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World a weekly collective share, however you want to put it, with all kinds of discussions and topics on higher consciousness living. So we wanted to talk about. So let's back up. So last week, what was it we talked about? We're supposed to check these things out before we go on, and we never do.
Well, let me look and see. Hate to be so.
Because every week right now feels like it's a month. So to think back to last Monday is like, what was that about? Because I
feeling lonely on spiritual journey.
Oh, right. Okay. Give us a starting point anyway, right? So we can catch everybody up for the past week and what's going on collectively. So last week we talked about how it can feel lonely on the spiritual journey, and it's really part of that individuality and coming into individual wholeness. And I don't even remember what we talked about, but I know it had to do with that. So what was interesting is because we've been talking a lot for the past several months, right, about the individual wholeness thing, right?
Yes.
So inevitably, in some way, shape, or form, the twin flame thing was going to have to come up, right? So what many might ask, what is the twin flame? What is the twin flame thing? Well, that's still really the challenge that we have is that everything that we remember, once we really explode into our higher consciousness, is very challenging to define in 3D terms, especially right now.
Right. Even there are no words, and the emotions are vaguely familiar, but almost incongruent.
Well, because the ego is going, well, how do I categorize this? How do I put this in, right?
And how do I build a box to put that in?
Right.
Right.
Which is what we spend a lot of time and energy doing. And that's the point. Like we've talked about over the past several weeks, letting go of the boxes, a lot of the things that we define, hold as definitions, hold as expectations, right? So this is a big one. Good morning, Yasmin. So this is a big one because there's a lot of talk out there in the spiritual community about twin flames. And so
and it has been for a while.
And it comes and it goes, And over the course of the past, 10 years, I have been asked by higher guidance to help people with the twin flame thing because of my personal experience and all that kind of stuff. And yet I've had so many unanswered questions like, okay, yeah, I can help people with it, but I still don't know the answer to why or how it fits in and all that kind of stuff. And we have you and I have had many conversations about this over the years. And it'll be funny because I'll have a whole glut of people that come to me and it ends up being conversations about twin flames. And then it goes away for a while, and then it comes back, and then it goes away, and then it comes back.
Right.
Well, I think it was about December when it started to come back again. And and yet it was from the inside out where I was seeing things and understanding things and going, okay, so why is this relevant to the bigger picture? And then, of course, this time it was that I saw and felt and knew things inside. And then you and I had the conversations, and then we were doing, energy work on it. And then the conversation started kind of with other people, right? Which is usually the other way around, which is sort of funny.
Right.
But so let's talk about that. The idea of the twin flame. People talk about the twin flame as like one soul that's been split in half. And the twin flame is like, they're two halves of that. And I'm not quite sure that's actually the accurate definition, but it's about as close to one as we, I think, have in this level of consciousness, right? We talk about frequency, and what I do know is that it is and it's like splitting our individual. So if we talk about individual wholeness, right, we talk about the individual. I guess that would be where we talk about the individual soul.
Right.
But I think what happens in our mind is that our mind immediately, when you say soul, goes to like the idea or expectation of a person, right?
Right. Right.
Where I think his soul is a lot more than what we, I'm pretty sure it's a lot more than what we have thought it is, right?
Right.
So it's at the very high, like, I guess, I am level of our consciousness.
That's exactly what I was thinking, the I am.
Yeah. And at some level there is where we split within a wholeness, right? Within the wholeness.
Right.
For whatever purpose, right? So it's not the person. That's the thing. This is the thing where we get really stuck on, is it's not the person that is the twin flame. It is that spark of consciousness of which you're the same soul.
Right.
That is the twin flame, right? So that's a really challenging thing for us to embrace, because right away we want to attach it to a person, right? Or an
right. Right.
Because I was sitting there this morning asking guidance while I was in the dentist chair getting my teeth cleaned. Like, okay, so let me zone out, and what is it that is important to talk about? Well, this is the first place to talk about it, because many like, they talk about it like, oh, the twin flame's like the other person that's like my perfect soulmate, and da 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 da, and there's all this stuff out there, right? There's all this stuff out there that talks about, oh, like, it's like this draining, like heavy, romantic, needy kind of scenario that so many put to it, right?
Well, and it falls falls more in the victim category, like, I have no choice.
Right. And that's where I've had a lot of people come to me, which it has been a very big test in my acceptance, right? Because the inside of me is like, oh, come on, because this is victimhood, right? No matter how you look at it, it's victimhood.
Exactly.
Right. It doesn't matter if it's a twin flame. It doesn't matter if it's whatever. I remember working with somebody who I know is very, very conscious and very, very aware, and had this really intense interaction with their twin flame. And then she said to me once, I yearn for him. And I said, no, but yearning comes from the ego, because then the yearning means the ego believes there's something lacking. Right. So the yearning, that comes from the ego. Now, and by the way, so here's a couple of elements for people. Let's talk about if you meet someone embodied who has that spark of the other part of yourself, then you will have that recognition.
Right.
It is like having it, and because I know what that's like, it's knowing somebody is there, as it's like a frequency of matching that you've not experienced before. Okay. Because it's something that we're not used to embodied here, and
right.
in not remembrance. Right.
What just occurred to me was, it's almost like you have that attraction of, this is what self-love looks like, because that's been a place or a space where you have loved yourself. It's almost like you can externalize it.
Sometimes I think it's the feeling of that frequency. It's like hitting that. Right. It's like hitting that. To me, it's almost like when you're tuning a guitar and you hit the perfect pitch, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that does not. So here's the thing. What that does not mean necessarily. So many people automatically think that's supposed to be, they try to box it into a romantic relationship.
Right.
But I've known sisters who are twin flames. I've known mother-daughters twin flames. I've known father-daughter twin flames. I know mine, who is somebody very dear to me and has been, a very close, dear, like, friend over the years. And yeah, we had times when we were younger, but it's beyond that, because it's a completely different connection. And so can it sometimes manifest into a romantic relationship? Sometimes, But I would say that the percentage is probably very, very small, especially because it's not the whole other part of you that you recognize. Good morning, Laurel. It's the vibration of that other part of that energetic split, right? That is embodied in that particular person. So here's the thing. So then technically you probably could have more than one twin flame embodied.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because at the I am level, it doesn't mean that like we're all the same, like only one person that embodies at a time. There is no time and space. So this is really big. Because right, like then we say, oh, well, what do you mean? I have more than one twin flame. Well, no and yes.
I know, 'cause, if we all essentially roll up to the same place, everyone's a twin flame.
Right, except I think
it's different.
Except it's a different, I think, I know it's a different experience, right? So it's a different experience. And I do know it's a different experience, I don't think. It has to do with seeing yourself in the mirror, right? Mm-hmm. So what I was talking to somebody about last week, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is that really the essence of the twin flame is such that when you meet each other embodied, it in some way shows you the mirror of yourself in a way that you have not looked at from inside before, right? So like you're saying, right, the externalization.
It's that reflection that you can't look away from.
Right. And you have no veils over. So you cannot look away from it, and you have no veils over it. So it is raw and it is bare. Okay.
And when I say you can't look away from it, that doesn't always mean it's a good thing.
Exactly. I was going to do that next.
Right.
So many people, most cannot yet look into that mirror without any flinching. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So the idea, of course, is yes, the remembrance of unconditional love as wholeness. Right. And so there's a spark of that remembrance. There's a spark of that remembrance when you have that embodied in another person. And so what happens is right away, like you start to connect up here, even, like though you have this interaction here in the 3D. And there's some version based on your journey here in the 3D that will reflect at for the higher level, right? That is the lessons for you to learn by that reflection, right? So,
right.
The person I was talking to last week that was talking about this said, well, it's sort of like, because I said, well, I've never understood why. I said, well, I guess I'm not really sure why people are so desperately obsessive and needy and addictive to that energy. And the person I was talking to said, well, it's probably because it's the idea at some level, or the knowledge at some level, that it's like, oh, it's a nourishing, comforting place of unconditional love. And I said, except it's just the mirror of that. So if you don't already have that for yourself, it's going to show you everything but that. Right. And so that's the problem, is people go, oh, I feel the draw, but now I'm repelled and I'm repulsed because it's showing me what I don't want to look at within myself in the embodiment of another person, because it is me, right? In another form. It is another part of me in another form that I've felt like that I've forgotten I've had, right? So like, yeah, so many, and this is important to talk about, because there are so many groups out there that focus on, like how to get together with your twin flame. And it's like, it's not the goal. I mean, in general, I would say, and I don't know percentages, but what comes to me is like less than 10% of the twin flames that embody together are supposed to be in anything but come together, do what you're supposed to do, and then finish your journey separately. Right. So it's a challenge, because what happened was, and when you and I have been working on it, right? And when it started coming up to me, and I see mine out in the ethers all the time, and the twin flame comes to me in my sleep, and we have conversations, and we're doing whatever work out there. And then I'm like, well, it's weird because our lives as embodied, the one that I know is embodied, is very, we just have different lives, you know, and I love them
Right.
unconditionally. I love him unconditionally, but I'm very happy and madly in love with my husband. So there's no need. It's not a need thing.
Right.
It's and will I say when I was younger, did I need that? I needed it when it was prominent in my life, the friendship, but it was for a completely different reason than, what people, think.
Right.
Um, so it was really like, I look back and having this understanding, I look back and I was like, well, yeah, there were some really formative years that were really important that I had to get through, that I had signed up to get through. And I needed some things to support me, to remind me that love was there, even though I was going through the very not love kind of experience,
Right. Right.
So, it's such an individual thing, is what you and I have talked about. And,
Right.
and there are no two that are alike. So for somebody to say, oh, well, everybody's supposed to have, well, the ultimate twin flame relationship is this, that's really not the case. What
Right.
really is the case is the ultimate twin flame relationship is the connection and the spark and the activation that happens, whether it takes 5 minutes, 5 years, 5 decades, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference, or 5 seconds, right? But that it also helps you to complete the journey that you set up for yourself and that they set up for themselves, whatever that looks like. So what we had gotten to talking about last week is the bigger picture of this, because now the bigger picture stuff is starting to come in and we're getting stuff with new context,
Right.
without words, right? So what we keep on seeing is that connection is what's important at the very high consciousness level, that reconnection, or and it's really not even a reconnection, it's a re-acknowledgement at a conscious level of a part of us that we've partitioned off,
Right.
for whatever purpose, to create this other level of energy to bring in and embody here, right? So meeting them, not necessarily important, right? Touching energetically and making that activation in whatever that moment is, that's the important part. And everything else is actually completely irrelevant as to what happens in the 3D. That's what was coming to us.
What I was thinking about it last night, and as I was turning the lights out and everything, getting ready to go to bed, there were a few low lights left on in a room, and the room has windows in it. And I noticed when I looked in the windows, there was still a reflection of the room before I turned those lights out. And what I saw in the reflection, it was almost like there were things in the reflection that I didn't notice in the room. And it was like, so I see different things through that reflection that I don't see looking at the real thing.
Right.
And I thought that's a perfect example of what we're experiencing now with the twin flame relationship. It's the connection so that you can see those hidden things.
Right. Right. And like I said, it can take 5 minutes, it can take 5 years, it can take 5 decades, right? But there's no necessity for it to be a relationship.
Right.
I actually know somebody who told me that they were pretty sure they had met their twin flame at like a weekend class they had taken once. And they were like, this is really odd. This is like very strange. And it was a woman who was married and happy in her life and everything else. And she's like, and I felt this really odd connection with this man I met. And it was just really unique. And we had a really intense and good experience. It was a spiritual class of some sort. And she was like, and then I was like, okay, nice to meet you. Glad we met. Now I can move on. It was like such a very open, it was a very open and that was a very conscious meeting, to say, okay, we did what we needed to do.
Right.
Thank you. And now let's just move on and go finish this. Right.
Right.
So that's where we get into. So the thing that's important to talk about with all this, I think, well, I know because this is what we have been experiencing, is getting out of our own minds in terms of our expectations and definitions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the twin flame thing. The twin flame thing is important. We can literally go out there energetically and do that activation without ever crossing paths here if we choose.
Right, exactly.
And it's unimportant. It's not like you're going to be missing something if you don't, right? And there are some who don't have, who didn't do that because it was just a different journey. And it finally is clear though as to why, like, you can have, and I've seen people who, by the way, your twin flame, that spark can leave one person, walk out and show up in another one.
Right.
Which is screwed with people's minds because you're like, well, I thought this was my twin flame, but now I met this person. I'm pretty like, it's the same essence. And I'm like, yeah. So if you took it that way, then it's like, well, then how are you going to like say I'm supposed to be with this person for the rest of my life if they walk out next week?
Exactly. You just keep hopping.
Right.
Hopping relationship.
So the thing is for us, okay, so this part of the conversation was for everyone to sort of look at this and stop getting in our own way in terms of trying to define out of 3D standards, because that's what we're trying to do, right?
Right. Exactly. Right. We're trying to put it in a box.
And, I remember like I've worked with one woman once who found me online and we did a session and there was this woman that she was having this whole thing with, this whole like challenging interaction with that she worked with, and they were like business partners, whatever. And I said, oh yeah, because she's your twin flame. And I saw it right away. It was like, and it was this very intense experience. And I said, yeah, she's your twin flame. And the person responded to me, I'm not gay. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I just said this person's your twin flame. And it doesn't even matter because it's not that. Like, it's not supposed to be that. So we put so much energy. So here's the thing. In the majority of many who I see out there, they put a whole bunch of inordinate amount of energy into seeking that twin flame, into chasing it. Because here's what happens, and this is what's sort of coming to the surface. That spark of familiarity of your own soul is such a frequency of match that you're not used to here, right? In such a clear way.
Right.
That it can be to the ego an addictive kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, and it's to me, I can see it easily being an escape.
Yes. Well, and a distraction, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I've had people that come to me, they're like, well, I met my twin flame, but I'm married. And I'm like, okay, I know mine. I've known mine for a very long time and I'm married. And it's not the same person I'm married to, so it doesn't matter. And like I said, I love them both like with my whole heart. And one doesn't impede on the other. It has nothing to do with it. It's two different, completely different relationships.
Right.
But what happens, I think, is that we feel like the ego says, oh, what is that? What is that resonance? Ooh, that's exciting. And I want more of that. Well, when you say I want more of that,
shiny.
Yes, right? Oh, I want to drop all my other toys, or I want to drop everything else because, I remember that I want more, right? Which becomes sort of obsessive, which usually become obsessive. It can ruin marriages, it can ruin relationships, it can ruin a whole bunch of stuff because if the ego takes over and allows it to be a distraction. And then it can turn into an addiction, which then comes into victimhood, like real victimhood.
Right.
Of I can't help myself.
Well, it's the ultimate excuse for not doing what you need to do.
Right. Because you're trying to get more. You're trying to get that fix, right? You want to find that moment again of that pure connection. And it's like, no, I want more. I want more. I want more. And I'll do anything. I'll give up anything else just to get that. That's like a druggie. That sounds like a druggie, right?
Yeah, it does.
Or an alcoholic. It's like, I'll do anything so I can get that next fix. And that's really what it turns into. And then many write it off by saying, oh, well, it's because it's my twin flame and I can't help it. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Actually,
right.
It's to show you the purity of what that can be when you're whole within yourself. That's what the reflection is about. Right.
Right.
And so from the bigger picture, we've been talking about the loneliness on the journey and all that kind of stuff. It's also a reminder that we are alone. We're not alone. And when we are in that wholeness, it's such an orgasmic,
Right.
incredible remembrance, right? Presence. And that's what we have. It's like we just need a little reminder every once in a while, right? And so when we look at it from the bigger picture, that connection really comes through more like, when you look at it actually at a much, much higher level, it's literally like I keep on seeing it as little sparks of activation. And what that is that unconditional wholeness, that unconditional self-love being holding a space and creating a whole new dimension to encompass, like, the set of dimensions on Earth to help the evolution to shift, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that spark is all that's important. The 3D actions and relationships and definitions have nothing to do with the bigger picture. It has to only do with your individual journey. Maybe
Which you create.
right, which you create. And so maybe you need to overcome the heaviest addiction you can, and that's what you create for yourself. But
Right.
it
Right.
is not, the goal there is not to end up with that individual. It's to get over that individual and get on with your life.
Exactly.
So it changes this perspective, and it's no less beautiful because it is absolutely incredible, because that's where we come to unconditional love is beyond any kind of category, right?
Right.
And for us to remember that, and sometimes we need that to help us remember that within ourselves, right? And I know that was part of my experience when I was going through those rough years. And and I had another experience not that long ago where it was just like all of seeing me without any partitions, like, and it was so huge. I cried, for, like, I sobbed but it wasn't like I was sad or that I was happy. It was so huge of a place of wholeness. Like, and I never really understood that until just the last couple of weeks with all these epiphanies coming on. It was just such a huge remembrance of wholeness, of like, and not remembering how to hold it in my body, that's what caused all the sobbing and the crying and everything, because my
Right.
body was
Right.
like, how do I hold this? But that's for us to do, that's for us to remember, right? So the commitment is for us to allow that spark and activation to happen, to be thankful that we set it up, and then to move on for our own journeys, to come to a place where we remember that within ourselves. And then we might meet up again before we go, or not, and then we'll be done, but
Right.
that's part of the whole understanding. Now,
Right.
what else was around that? Do you remember? I think that was about it.
Yeah, that feels like a leap forward. Whether it's everything or not, it's definitely a leap
Well,
forward.
and it's so much cleaner, right? Because it feels so heavy when you put so much weight around it. I mean, there are people where as soon as, like, you say the term twin flame to them, it weighs down the conversation by thousands of pounds.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and so many preconceptions come in that you then have to overcome in order to evolve your understanding,
Yeah,
which makes it that much more of a challenging subject.
right. And really, it's the strength of us not putting it into the authenticity of us not putting it into a box
Right.
of expectations. And that's all connected to us. Also, what we've talked about is letting go of all the expectations around what relationships are supposed to be, right?
Exactly. Right.
And connections, what connections are supposed to be.
Well, and I think that, and I've been thinking a lot about this weekend. Expectations, period, I think go hand in hand with judgments.
Absolutely.
Because and if you move through life in that authenticity, there's no need for expectations, no need for judgment.
And no need to find something that you think is outside of you that is not.
True. True.
it changes the perspective and our motivation for everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really goes back to the more and more we're seeing this, and now we're remembering bigger context. And the other part of the twin flame thing of the activation and coming back together is what I was shown that was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, is in that split at that soul level that we did, right? It's sort of like 3D movie glasses, like the old, not, I looked at it as like the old ones, like we had the blue lens and the red lens, right? And if you took the glasses off, you couldn't see the picture clearly. And it's almost like, one spark is the blue, one spark is the red. And so like, as we have chosen to do certain things in the 3D in these dimensions, not just the 3D in these dimensions, as well as some other one, like higher ones as well, we have chosen to do them separately for whatever purpose. And now it's time to bring them back together. And that's part of what those activations and sparks are, is put the glasses back on.
Right.
Because that's how we then get the context at the higher level of consciousness.
Right. Which is seen through reality and the reflection at the same time to get the full picture.
Right. And seeing through the illusion, right?
Yeah.
And really seeing the bigger picture. Because once I saw that in the session I did with the person, and then after that I was like, I'm doing that for me as well, for whatever I've yet to do out there on that. And I'll tell you what, it's an incredible expansion. And it's almost like when you put on a new pair of glasses and you have to focus for a minute because you're not used to that clarity.
Right.
And you're not used to remembering like that or seeing.
Well, it with the physical glasses, your brain has to adjust to a different way of seeing. So if we take that to the soul level, if you want, or that energetic level, it's allowing your energetic brain to see in a different way.
Yeah. And so once we allow that, the thing is that what I was getting in my meditations since I've been looking at that is some people who have pursued a relationship in the 3D with their twin flame have made it very 3D in a way that they haven't even done that yet. Like that they haven't even done that connection yet.
Right.
So the idea is to consciously go out there and be like, okay, so let's allow this to come back together so that we can have a full purview again, right? A full purview of remembrance.
Right.
In the context of consciousness that's well beyond here.
Well, and in doing it that way, it can be, with whoever and however many twin flames I have. It doesn't have to be just the ones you're aware of.
Oh, well, I'm just talking about, I'm not even talking about the persons. I'm talking about the spark to allow them to come together in wholeness so that you can be both parts of that, have the glasses on and see the whole perspective. Yeah. So I'm not even talking about people at all. I'm talking about energy of that part of you that is represented by a twin flame, right? Which is truly, like I said, it's like what we try to do is we put it to people, and it's like, no, don't put it to people, put it to the energy, and yes, will you have resonance with the people who hold that spark, that have an embodiment of that spark? Absolutely. But they're also going to show you different reflections of what it is that is still for you to see of yourself within yourself, right? Like we were talking about in the beginning, it's not always comfortable.
Right.
In fact, it's some of the most challenging relationships of people that I've known.
So, I would agree.
Yeah. So one woman I knew when she realized we were doing exercise and she realized her twin flame was her ex-husband, who she'd been married to for 26 years, it was a really dark and abusive relationship in all ways. And it was like she hit rock bottom with that relationship, and that's when she left. And when she realized, she cried and cried and cried, and she didn't want to look at that. And then later on, she's like, it makes so much sense though. She goes, I had a connection with him that was like not of this world, which is part of what my ego kept on telling me, but I've got to stay.
Right.
Because of that connection for, and you forsake all the abuse and everything else to say, oh, that's okay because we still have this connection, which when you look at it from the, from the 3D, you're like, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense, So the key is for us to let go of that expectation. And it can be, yes, it can, whatever you need so that you can look in that mirror and get past it. I mean, today the woman is very, like, she has gone through hell and back in terms of coming to her own consciousness and taking on responsibility for her own reality and coming back from, I mean, she got into addiction and everything else herself. And, and she cleaned up, and then she became really spiritual, and then she started looking at bigger, perspectives, and, and so, okay, it did serve a purpose, even
Right.
if it was not the one that you would probably expect it to be,
Right.
So, so the key is for us to take that out of our filters, right?
Right. Right. And the key is to align with that spark.
The spark, and not necessarily the person.
Right. Exactly.
Or the spark and anyone who, holds the embodiment of that, right?
Right. Or anyone who aligns with that spark.
Right. And allow it to just be fluid,
Right.
like not a stop point, but just a fluidity of, okay, what if I brought all of those who've embodied that spark into my life now, because now I'm ready to be completely unconditional love in all my relationships. How cool would that be?
That feels great, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, every person I know is a spark of my twin flame. And oh my God, and look at how awesome and unconditional it all is. Oh my God.
That's that's exponential explosion and expansion. And I mean, that is
At the collective level, right? Because the more we do that, that's
right.
Crazy awesome.
That is, because that takes the individual wholeness to the collective wholeness.
Yes.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing today, all that.
I'm liking that.
Oh God, God, that was a big epiphany. I was like, oh, well, look at that. That's incredible.
Right.
Woo, there's a big explosion right there.
Right.
And to let it be amazing and incredible and love filled and joy filled and fun filled and fluid and whole and all that, and to allow that whole, I see Yashmin.
Yashmin likes that
jumping
idea.
up and down. Yes. Yeah. Like, allow it to be all, and I sort of feel like that's what we're doing. Like, when we talk about bring our tribe together, right? It's like a lot of some of that essence, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, oh, that feels so good. Wow, that's
really
so beyond words. It's like, oh yeah.
What a perfect Monday morning activity.
Oh,
change your whole life.
Water's right there.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so we allow that. And we allow it to be free of expectation. Yeah, there's the yawn.
Oh, big yawn.
Free expectation, free of boxes, free of, confinements and limitations and victimhood, and to just be free to allow that re-assimilation or acknowledgement, right? To come back together and to do it while we're also embodied. And that's the beautiful thing that we've never done before in that pure of a way, right?
That's the amazing part.
Yeah. So all of that. Are we ready?
I've been ready.
We're already there. I can already feel all stuff like fireworks. Right. Let's go.
All righty.
Yeah, it was a hard one to come back from. I wanted to stay
Yeah,
out there all
yeah.
day.
I could have easily stayed quite a while.
Oh, I think I might just do that later. Oh, hold it here. Bring it in. That's the thing. Yeah. That was just beautiful. I just kept on seeing it was like this domino effect, right?
Right.
It was like, yes, this is the light. This is the ignition, you know? Oh,
Yep.
it was beautiful. It is beautiful. So a lot to process as always. Yeah, some minor topic for Monday morning.
Yeah. A little food for a little brain food for the week.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there'll be more. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
with this week's Ascending World, have a good one.